The American dream is always to buy a home, and for families, it's getting more and more difficult, it seems. But what is the true cost to buying a home for a family of four? We're going to look through some recent findings on average price per state, the average amount of income you need to be making in order to afford that home as a family of four. Good news for people in Pennsylvania. Maybe these results are a bit encouraging. Talk about them next. Welcome in. This is the Smart Mortgage Show. Glad to have you on our channel and our show once more with Bill Linton, Cross Country Mortgage. Bill, last episode we shared the home prices and how much they've increased across Pennsylvania in the last 5 years, which I encourage you to go check out if you haven't already. Today I want to talk about kind of another side of this discussion and how much you need to be making to afford these homes. And I know this is such a big question for every family. And I'm sure anyone that comes in to meet with you at Cross Country Mortgage, this is kind of the big thing is like, hey, Bill, how much do I need to be making? How much can I afford?
Yeah. So we are always very focused on, there's a difference between what you get approved for and what fits in your budget. And we always want to make sure that we're most important focused on what can you really afford. This article here, it absolutely, provides some interesting information, showing Pennsylvania as for a family of four, which would be essentially a 3-bedroom home, that the income needs to be a minimum of $85,000 a year. Now, I think that's probably a little bit low for the area I'm in. If you spread across the whole state, there are some low-cost rural areas. It's probably a little bit higher where I'm at. I would say somewhere over 100. But I think that being just over 100 to be able to own a home and working with somebody or just being diligent yourselves about looking at the budget, fitting that mortgage payment into your budget. I think that's still relatively good news that housing, although is less affordable, more expensive than it's been in a while, it still is affordable.
Yeah, this was a state-by-state affordability analysis. It was carried out by Realtor.com, so you're probably familiar with the website. We're going to drop the link in the show description, so you can actually go through state-by-state and look for yourself. Obviously, you can probably guess some of the higher states, Hawaii, California. But as you mentioned, Bill, Pennsylvania kind of falls on the bottom third, I think, of the list. But to your point, I think you're on the eastern side of the state, and you look at the surrounding areas. New Jersey, 156,000 is the average income you need to have, or the income you need to have to be able to afford the home. Delaware, 138, Maryland, 118, New York, 190. So to your point, I think some of those more high density areas, it's going to be a little bit more expensive, but I think the good news is there are areas in the state and there are some affordable, maybe more affordable homes than you might have thought potentially.
Yeah, and to your point, Ben, the population density a lot of times, plays a part. And I'll tell you, so we're 20 minutes south of Philadelphia in the Garnet Valley, Glen Mills area. And, values are kind of high here. But if you're willing to drive, 30 minutes southwest of here, you get the same home for 100,000 less. And, some people don't mind the commute. So there are ways to save money that way as well. But I think overall, Pennsylvania presents itself as still being a pretty affordable state. And the good news is that it's also a state in which the values continue to climb nicely. So it's in that sweet spot, I think, for a good place to buy real estate.
Yeah, and you look around at some of the lowest ones, just for reference, if you're interested in that, West Virginia 71,000, Ohio 75,000, which surprised me a little bit. Indiana 80. So the Midwest, I think overall was maybe most affordable in terms of how much you need to be earning, but Pennsylvania kind of right in that mix. So interesting enough, and you can check this out in the link below. But when it comes to figuring out kind of where you stand, Bill, and if you're going into that home buying process and you're looking to buy a home in Pennsylvania or, surrounding areas, wherever it might be, what do you need to know in terms of coming into the process and working with you to find out that mortgage and truly how much you need to be making in order to get into that home that you want to buy?
Yeah, so I think the first step is to talk to someone like myself, start the process to get pre-approved. The first step is just a 15-minute phone call where we ask you a lot of questions. We learn about your scenario, try and, understand where you are today, and how do we get from A to B. And then from there, during the process, we're going to gather some info and then present you with options, talk about your budget, make sure that everything fits, make sure that we're helping you to make the best financial decisions possible.
Again, you can start that process at smartmortgageshow.com. You can actually text LEND to 21,000 to get on Bill's calendar, begin talking about some of these things. But I know affordability seems to be the big issue with a lot of people. But there are some areas, and this can kind of point you to some places that maybe you can potentially look to live, or just kind of get an idea of how you compare state to state. But I think it's interesting, Bill. Again, I think the ultimate goal for a lot of people is still to own, as we talked about home prices last time. And I think that's still within reach, but there is definitely some concern, I think, with the economy. And we talk about this every single week on the channel on best positioning yourself. But that's why you also work with someone like yourself to try to find ways to improve your position, right? So that when you are prepared to buy that home, that you're in the best position possible to win that.
Yeah, doing some mortgage planning and working with a professional to understand where you are. Can we do anything to help your credit scenario, your debt ratio? Can we get a better rate, different product? That's all that, if we do a few little things, that adds up to be one big thing. So, our process is very consultative and in depth. It's not like, just go fill this out online, we'll send you a loan estimate, and then we'll see it settlement. It's very hands-on. There's a lot of questions. We want to learn all your goals, all your financial goals, make sure this fits, because you might buy a big house now and you can afford it, but now you can't fund your investment account. So it's actually negatively affecting your retirement. We definitely don't want to do that. Or if you do want to do that, you want to go in eyes wide open that that's what you're doing right now. And maybe that in 2 years, your plan changes so that you can properly fund your retirement. But you don't want to do that blindly. Next thing you know, you're 60, your retirement's not there. And nobody's told you or helped you along the way with these really important considerations. That's what we're looking at. We want to make sure that you're making all of the right decisions with good information.
Very good. Well, hopefully this is interesting to you. If you liked it, please subscribe to the show. Again, we're going to drop that link in the show notes to check out all the different states and what the average family of four needs to be earning in order to afford their home in their state. So very interesting. If you have more questions, smartmortgageshow.com. Come join us. We'll look forward to talking to you on the next video.
Thanks so much.
This program is for informational purposes only. Please consult a qualified professional before taking any action. Bill Litton is a loan advisor and regional president with Cross Country Mortgage, NMLS number 147060.